What happens when the thing you hunt is you? When the blood in your own veins is half monster, but the fire in your heart is all hero. Today, we're talking about the man who walks the line, the baddest vampire hunter on the planet, Blade the Daywalker. Welcome back to Marvel Echoes Resonance. I'm your host, Will, and today we're diving into one of the most unique origin stories in all of Marvel, precisely because it's an origin that had to happen twice. If you're 90s kids like me, the first introduction to Blade was most certainly the 1998 movie. It was this R-rated, leather-clad, techno-goth martial arts masterpiece. It was the Matrix before the Matrix, and it's honestly proved that Marvel formula could really work on the big screen long before the MCU. But here's the thing, the character in that movie, that wasn't the character in the comics, not really. To find the original Blade, we have to set ourselves way back to 1973. The Comics Code Authority had just loosened its restrictions on horror, and Marvel dived headfirst. They had Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, and the crown jewel, the Tomb of Dracula. In issue number 10, writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan introduced a new supporting character, a vampire hunter named Blade. And this Blade, he wasn't the superhuman Daywalker. He was a man, a very tough, very skilled man, but a man. He had a 70s style green bomber jacket, goggles, a bandolier of teakwood knives, and an afro. And his powers were simple. He was immune to vampire bites. That's it. He couldn't turn into one of them. His origin, revealed later in Marvel Preview number 3, is one of the all-time great comic book tragedies. Eric Brooke was born in a London brothel in 1929. His mother, Tara, was in labor when they called for a doctor. But the man who showed up wasn't a doctor. It was Deacon Frost, a vampire, who fed on Tara as she gave birth. The act killed her, but as Eric was born, the vampire enzymes passed from Frost into his bloodstream. This cocktail made him a vampire, part human, part vampire. It gave him his immunity and it slowed aging process, but none of the strengths. He grew up an orphan on the streets until he was found by Jamal Afri, an old jazz trumpeter who also happened to be a vampire hunter. This was his Obi-Wan Kenobi. Afri trained him, becoming a father Eric never had, but this is a tragic story, remember? The training ended when Dracula himself found and turned Afri into a vampire, forcing Blade to stake his own mentor. That trauma cemented his mission. It wasn't about saving the world, it was about revenge. His entire focus on two names, Deacon Frost, the monster who killed his mother, and Dracula, the monster who took his father. For years, this was Blade. He was a lone wolf, a gritty street-level hunter who teamed up with the descendants of the Dracula novels, heroes like Quincy Harker and Rachel Van Helsing. He also worked with Frank Drake, a literal descendant of Dracula, and a vampire detective named Hannibal King. And as we'll cover in the Nightstalkers episode, this trio, Blade, Drake, and King, were eventually brought together by Doctor Strange. They were the original Midnight Suns, a tactical team designed to be a scalpel against the coming demonic invasion led by Lilith. This was Blade's first real foray into being part of a team, and it solidified his reputation as the Marvel Universe's #1 supernatural expert. And that's where his story probably would have stayed. A cool, C-list, horror-centered character, but then 1998 happened. The movie Blade was a smash hit. Wesley Snipes was Blade, just like Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man. He was a martial arts master. He had a healing factor, he had super strength, he could walk in the sun. He was, in a word, a superhero. And the comics had a problem. Their Blade was, well, he was just a guy with some knives and a good immune system. The pop culture echo of the movie was so loud it completely drowned out the original character. So Marvel did what comics do best. They retconned it. And this brings us to Blade's second origin, the one that made him the powerhouse that we know today. It's a fascinating two-step process. The first attempt to align him with the movies happened back in Peter Parker Spider-Man number 8 in 1999. The story's logic was that Blade was hunting Morbius, the living vampire. Now, this is the key distinction. Morbius is a scientific pseudo-vampire, not a magical one. During their fight, Morbius bites Blade, and the story implied that the science vampirism reacted with Blade's Dhampir blood, unlocking movie-level powers. But that explanation didn't really sit right. It felt external, like he needed Morbius to become the real Blade. So Marvel did what they do. They retconned their retcon. In 2006, the Blade series by Mark Guggenheim was all clarified. It stated explicitly in issue number 5 and subsequent letters columns that Morbius's bite did, well, nothing. It was irrelevant. The true origin, and the one that is sometimes canon, sometimes not, depending how Marvel wants to spin it, is that Blade was born with all of those powers. His Dhampir heritage, that cocktail of enzymes from Deacon Frost. They had always given him the potential for superhuman strength, speed, and healing. They were just latent, hidden, right? They needed to come out like a mutant X gene. And this is a crucial step. The comic book character had finally and fully become the movie character. He was born the Daywalker, and he'd always been the Daywalker. But of course, with the upcoming movie, his story may change again to be more in line with the MCU, or to be more in line with the Morbius movies we saw by Sony. And this is where Blade's modern echo really begins. Once Blade had this power-up, the rest of the Marvel Universe had to take him a lot more seriously. He was no longer just a specialist you called to stake Dracula. He was a superhuman asset, a living weapon. His story got bigger, faster. He spent time in England, joining MI13 alongside Captain Britain to fight a full-scale vampire invasion in the UK, led by, well, who else? Dracula. But the biggest shift came when he was recruited by the Avengers. Think about that for a minute. The Avengers can handle alien invasions. They can handle robot armies. But what happens when hell literally invades Las Vegas? What happens when a legion of ghosts possesses the team? You can't punch a ghost. That's when you call Blade. He became the team's supernatural consultant, their in-house Witcher, their John Constantine. He was the guy who knew how to kill the unkillable, and he had the muscle to back it up. This all culminated in the most fascinating development in his history. During Jason Aaron's Avenger run, when a vampire civil war erupted, Blade stepped up to the power vacuum and got himself declared as the sheriff of the vampire nation, operating out of Dracula's castle in Chernobyl. Talk about a fox in a henhouse. It was a brilliant, complicated political move that put him in charge of the very monsters he'd sworn to destroy, forcing him to police them from the inside. This new, upgraded, and complex Blade is the one who exists today. He's been a mentor at the Strange Academy, teaching the next generation of magic users. He's had to confront his own legacy with the recent introduction of his daughter, Brielle Brooks, also known as Bloodline, who has, well, inherited all of his powers. From a 1970 human hunter to a 1990s movie-inspired retcon, Blade's entire legacy is about evolution. He's a man defined by a single night of tragedy, who was then completely redefined by a single blockbuster movie. He is the living embodiment of a pop culture echo, a hero who had been rewritten to become the icon he was always meant to be. So I'll leave you with this question. Do you prefer the original gritty human-level hunter from the 1970s? Or do you think that the new Daywalker retcon is the best thing to have ever happened to the character? Let me know as always in a comment below. Thanks for listening to this episode of Marvel Echoes. If you enjoyed the deep dive, make sure you subscribe or follow so you don't miss any of our episodes. Leaving a like and a review really help the podcast grow. And for more content, including a deeper dive into this episode, make sure you follow the link in the description below. Until next time, true believers, make mine Marvel.